Welcome to UFV College of the Arts Career Chat Series and our spotlight on creative careers. My name is Anna Griffith and I'm an assistant professor in theater in the School of Creative Arts. Our guest today is Delaney Bergstrom. Delaney graduated from UFV with a BA in theater and English. She is a multidisciplinary artist living and working in the Fraser Valley. Delaney is currently works as the development officer for the Chilliwack Arts and Cultural Center Society, and she has had the pleasure of working with the Harrison Festival of the Arts and Gallery 7 Theatre. Thank you so much for joining us today, Delaney.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we're going to start today by asking you to think back to when you were a kid, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
I struggled a lot. I wasn't one of those people that knew what I wanted to be from a really early age. I remember very distinctly, though, wanting to be a marine biologist, which is a sharp jump from where I am now.
That's great. And can you describe what you do now in your current role as a development officer?
Yeah, so as a development officer, primarily what I do is fundraising, sponsorship, and event coordination.
Great. And how does your job use the creative skills that you have or that you learned in your time at UFV?
Yeah, there are quite a few different ways that I've been able to apply my education to what I do now. First of all, being communication, a theater background is really great for being able to get out there and communicate clearly and effectively and get your message out there. I also have been really lucky to be able to curate beautiful events. So having a background in theater and production and knowing what to do to make an experience has been really helpful for me, because some of the things that I do include planning wine and beer festivals. So I do everything except marketing and licensing. So I source all the wineries, all the breweries, food, sponsors, silent auction, decor. Yeah, so it's a lot, but it is like pulling off a theatrical event. So working in that background has been super helpful.
That's great. And can you give us an example of some of the things that you consider when you're thinking about the experience that you're mentioning? And maybe that relates to the production kind of work, but maybe it doesn't. But what kind of things do you keep in mind when you're planning an experience?
When I'm planning an experience, I really want it to be a holistic experience. So from the start, when you walk in the door, like when you're first getting into a production, that there's something impactful that you're experiencing, and that everything along that way throughout the event fits within that theming, so that everything is super smooth. And then the behind the scenes is making everything run according to plan so that the guests don't see everybody in the background trying to make stuff happen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what do you wish that someone had told you about your industry when you were first starting?
I wish someone would have warned me about COVID, but I think everyone feels the same way. I didn't actually know that this career was an option, and it's very in line with everything that I've done throughout school. So I wish that I had known about it earlier, and I'm grateful that I got the opportunity that I did, but it is something, being in fundraising and development is actually quite highly sought after. So having those skills and learning about them earlier would have been really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think that we could do to like, how did you find this job? Maybe is a good question to start with.
Yeah, so actually I've been working for the center since 2011. So basically right out of high school. And I started in guest services, which I still work in now. I kind of wear two different hats within the building. So I did front of house for a number of years, and then seeing that side of the events when they were looking for their development officer in 2017, I applied and I got the job. So
nice.
Yeah, kind of laddered up.
A ladder up, yeah, and finding those opportunities to start working with a company or a society or, at the ground level, which is something that many of our students could do even while they're in school, like open up doors.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Totally.
And so our next question is, what do you think the best way is to get a job in your industry? Is it actually through that kind of laddering that you were just mentioning, or do you think there's another way to get into your industry?
I think what has been really helpful for me and a lot of people that I know that graduated is getting a well-rounded skill set, because the more opportunities that you take and the more things that you learn how to do, the more you are able to apply that to different experiences. Because when you're working in theater, things change a lot. And you want a staff who can handle any sort of problem that may arise, and having a skill set when you're building a team of people who can do a bunch of different things is actually really, really nice to have. And the other thing that I think is really important when getting a job is to just be really good to work with. So being punctual, being communicative, and being positive as you're doing things goes a long way, because then the people that you work with are going to recommend you to other people. And that's how I've gotten a lot of the other opportunities, is through being someone that people want to work with. So my name gets passed along, and then I get to say yes to a lot of really exciting things.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. Networking. Yeah, that's what it hardly comes down to. But you also mentioned skill sets. So I'm wondering, what kind of skills do you end up relying a lot on in your development officer position?
Definitely creative problem solving, for sure, because a lot of things that you don't see coming happen, and there's only so much that you can plan for, especially when I'm working front of house guest services. It's, you take it as you come and you solve the problem with what you have there, and you do it to the best of your abilities. So for me, that's what I rely on most, is just confidently making a choice, and then standing by that choice. Other than that, communication is very important. Being able to write effectively as well is super helpful. I'm actually working on a bunch of different grant applications right now. So having that background in different essay writing and reading articles, and being able to pick apart and say, okay, this is what they're asking me to provide, and how do I answer that question as best as fit.
That's great. Yeah. So valuable, those skills that you're mentioning. And so you've been involved in the arts a lot at UFB, but then also with the Harrison Arts Festival and Gallery 7. So what kind of experiences have you had in theater, the theater world? What experiences do you have that kind of translate into maybe some of the skills that you're learning, or that you've brought with you to your current position, or skills that you're relying on that kind of come out of the theater world?
Yeah, confidence is a big one, knowing that you're the right person for the job. Just like when you're going to audition for a part, knowing what you bring to the table is really important. So you can walk into a room and confidently say, this is what I'm able to do for you, and this is how I'm going to do it, is very important. I think a lot of people struggle with that self-esteem, thinking, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, but it goes a long way if you believe in yourself. So having that audition experience is very helpful when you are working with a job or an event, and coming up to sponsors and saying, hey, I'd really like to work with you. I also have used really a lot of prop building, which I didn't think was going to come in handy. The technicians probably curse me for the time that I built a wine bottle chandelier, and built a bunch of pom-poms, and, just basically making visions come to life and being able to execute that. Absolutely. Basically, it's like I go to the board, we talk and figure it out. So it's like a production meeting in a lot of ways, coming together and deciding, okay, what do we want this to feel like, and how do we execute that and make that happen? And there's a lot of also, just from school in general, research skills that come into play, needing to find, a certain company that does a certain thing, or how do I access government resources and things like that. So being able to ask the right questions to get the right answers is very important.
Great, yeah. And what's your favorite event that you've contributed to?
Oh, I love planning the wine and beer festivals. As stressful as it is, it's amazing to bring 600 people all together celebrating the arts, and we find live bands. I got to, I think it was last year, do a full-scale hand-painted backdrop that became an art installation for the night, which was amazing, getting the opportunity to do that. So yeah, those are probably my favorite.
Yeah, it's painting a really vivid picture of the kind of work that you do. So thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks.
if you were in school right now, what other skills would you try to learn?
I wish that I had learned the grant application stuff earlier. Um, I found that there's been a bit of a learning curve for me, and I'm grateful that I have the mentorship that I do. But if I had, even as a solo performer, known what goes into applying for grants and where to find them and what is available, I think that would be really useful because I know that there's workshops outside of university, but it would really be wonderful if that was built into the program.
Yeah, that is such good advice. I'm going to take that to heart, and we'll bring that in somehow.
Perfect.
Because you're right that like you're talking about how resilient you are, and if you're able to find that out, and it's trial and error, I'm guessing. But if you were to be able to hone those skills while you're still in school, then you're just a little bit ahead out of the gate.
Absolutely. The other thing I wish I learned earlier was how to master an Excel spreadsheet because there are amazing things that you can do in Excel that I had no idea. And I kind of had to figure out how to teach myself. And I'm doing all right, but I'm not a wizard by any means.
Great. And what advice do you have for any current students who are studying right now, like in the midst of the global pandemic and this really uncertain future? What advice do you have for students today?
I would say stay creative, try as many new things as possible. The worst that happens is that it doesn't work and you get to move on and try something new. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself right now. Everybody is really stressed out. So self-care is very important. And that's something as an artist and in a high stress career that you really need to prioritize because if you don't take care of yourself, then your body will demand it. And during a global pandemic, that's even more so important to really be listening to what's going on inside of you and making that time for yourself.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us, and for sharing your perspective and all the insight that you have in this really interesting industry that you get to be creative within. So
Yeah.
it's such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Delaney.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.